Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another, Toonamaste, stream. I'm here with the wonderful Mahatma Starseed, founder of Elite Motivation, and we have a very good episode today. Today, we are going to be talking about video games and spiritual development, a preliminary analysis from June 19th, 2012, by Seth T. Miller. Before we get started, though, now that you guys know what we're going to be talking about, Mahatma, if you would be so kind as to let the people know what you do.
Peace and light. Today I'm doing the being, and I'm being in the doing.
It's all about the progression.
Oh, yes, definitely. Moreover, I am a spiritual business yogi coach, and I help people define the space that they're living
Beautiful. 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 Absolutely beautiful. I love that introduction. Um, hmm. Yeah,
Excited
yeah,
to be here.
yeah.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you. It is a pleasure. So, to jump into this article, first let's start with the infographic that they have. Just to, break a couple things down. I'm going to say a couple things, we're going to talk, say a couple things, we're going to talk, just so everyone gets the whole rundown, right? So, video games have both positive and negative effects on the human brain. They can be used to educate through repetition and feedback, but they also have some less positive side effects, right? So, for an example, gameplay involves repeated actions that strengthen the brain cell connections underlying memory and learning. The premotor and parietal cortex, games that require real-time action like Space Invaders activate these areas, which control sensory movement. The frontal lobe. One study claimed for frequent players can get video game brain. This means the key parts of their frontal lobe become underused, which can alter moods. Right. I would also like to remind everyone, this is a great article, but keep in mind this is over 10 years ago, but still very useful. Prefrontal cortex, right? Games that require logical thinking like Othello and Tetris activate the area which controls decision making. Right, dopamine, which is involved in learning and feelings of reward, is released in the brain's stratagem during video game play. The dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. Immediately after firing a weapon in a video game, players have shown the activity in this area, which controls cognition and planning. And then there is the rosastral anterior cingulate cortex and amygdala. Yo, I ain't gonna hold you. The medical words ain't the best for me, but I'm doing my best. Still very interesting.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
I'm gonna post these in the description too. Areas that resolve emotional conflict showed lesser activity, while players firing a weapon can soon less activity soon afterwards. Studies say players may suppress their emotional response to cope with their violent actions. Well, that's part of this article, right? It talks about violent actions in the context of shooting games, but I also want to keep in mind for people if they have Audible, or you can just go get this from your local bookstore or Amazon. I don't know if people have local bookstores anymore, but there is a fantastic book which I would like to suggest, which is called No, it's not Game Thinking. I think it's The Gaming Mind. There we go. The Gaming Mind by Alexander Chris, PhD. That talks a lot about how violent games that males and females playing violent games both experience similar emotions, which isn't necessarily like the anger to want to go and hurt someone physically. Obviously, people get angry playing games, but it's different than what all scientific studies have shown about it. That people don't feel a sense of rage after they finish playing like Call of Duty and want to go harm people. It's actually pretty interesting. They feel between males and females a sense of calm, which I find particularly interesting in the context of what the game is. But you know, so that's just to give us a little brief understanding, right, of what we're talking about in the aspects of the brain. All right, but let's keep it going. All right, Mahatma, you ready for this?
Brain detail is everything. Yeah. Let's get it grooving.
All right, so the first article, the first paragraph of this article, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, it talks about the 1-2 in doctrine punch, right? So what does that mean? As quoted, are still almost totally oriented towards stimulation of the astral body. So what that means is video games are primarily focused at the stimulation of your astral body. Well, let's go a little bit deeper with that, right? And they pay no real attention to the spiritual reality of the ego, let alone the ego's task of transforming the astral body into a more pure state, spirit itself. That's pretty interesting. So what we got from that basically is what this person's saying in their first sentence, or more or less, that video games are for your higher self stimulation. Higher self is just another way you can kind of say astral body. There's a lot of ways you could say this, but for those who are not familiar with any of these terms, I feel like higher self is the easiest to understand.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And with that being said, it talks about your egoic body. Your egoic body is the body you're in right now. Whatever you're using to watch this, whatever you're using to walk around, that is your body in this reality, physical reality. And what this person is saying is that video games stimulate your higher self, but they do not stimulate your physical self and you in this dimensional plane. And a good way to compare that is people always say, like, well, video games don't really do anything for you. They just take your time. Unless you're like, nowadays it's very different, but unless you're an esports player, a content creator, or a game developer.
You can take your time.
Mm-hmm.
Anything
can take your time.
Anybody that subjects time of taking to only specific things is delusional. Definitely that.
yes, indeed. Everything takes your time, and I always find it funny how people always cite video games as
being on that lesser end, and that's just, people like to choose what addictions are positive and negative.
This is true. And really anything can be addictive, but also anything can be done with moderation. Now, let me be clear about that. I don't mean like go do some crazy stuff and do it moderately.
With reason.
Yeah, with
anything
reason.
Can be done with reason.
With reason. There we go. With reason. With reason. Right. So it's I find it pretty interesting. Now, if we can continue with this particular paragraph, I find it, the points that this person makes, Seth, are actually pretty interesting, and it actually astonishes me that this is like over a decade old. And
yeah, it is
over a decade.
Because I like listening to you, right? And saying what we're saying, it makes me like feel like this is like the reason why people are able to evade like this kind of a knowledge, because they think it's this situational kind of a thing.
You don't think it applies to everything, and that's pretty interesting when you think about it. That's why I do like how this person opens the article with first talking about the higher and higher self and your physical self, and yeah, there's out the gate just on that topic. That's how I knew this was we were about to go deep. I was like, okay. But Yeah. So in the context of another section, right? So another quote. On the one side is the fight or flight response and the release of tiny amounts of adrenaline, which is stimulating and gives us a greater sense of being alive and capable. On the other is the rewards response triggered through power ups, leveling, treasures, and so forth, which stimulates the release of dopamine involved in reward learning. So, what this person is talking about right there is basically that video games draw you in with a sense of adrenaline. And adrenaline is normally experienced through, I mean, in this physical world, uh, you can experience adrenaline like playing like basketball or soccer, but like in a more primitive sense, it's meant more to keep you alive, in the context of danger.
Heightened moments.
Yes, yes, yeah, heightened moments, or you got a conversation with your boss or a friend that you really don't want to be in, but you are, and how basically what video games do is they stimulate your egoic body's adrenaline, but your higher self knows you're not in danger. Nothing is happening to you. That's why you don't run away from your computer screen. I mean, I guess some people do if you're playing a horror game, but it stimulates that aspect of your body. And the moment you do what is needed to alleviate that adrenaline sense in the game, you are immediately hit with a reward. Now, not all games work this way, but a fair amount of them do. And I would also say that there's not necessarily a yes or no um, type of scale. I think this is like a sliding scale of like a 0 to 10. Like,
Yeah.
because,
Mhm.
Farmville has no violence or no movement based like gameplay, but it's like I plant my crops.
So it's so addictive. Oh, trust me, I used to play Farmville. Like Farmville was like people used to unfollow me because I used to post my bushels so much.
Yo, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, it definitely gives you, it definitely has a reward mechanism. It's definitely in there. I think Farmville is
Yeah.
more of like a patience thing. Um,
It's also like it's also a time thing because if you don't harvest your crops fast enough, they will die.
and I guess there is an adrenaline factor.
Yeah. Yeah. So like strawberries were 4 hours.
Hmm. Four.
So
Oh,
you had to be back in 4 hours to harvest those strawberries, and they give you like an hour
if you really think
before
about
they'll.
it, that's
Hmm.
kind of ingenious in terms of like getting people to play the game. But
Yeah.
in the context of like people probably got like school, work, other responsibility, like,
Yeah.
but I
I
kind of
used to
like
I
games
used
like
to
that.
uh, I used to sign on to my brother's Facebook to like purchase bushels from my store so that I can get more money and I can grow more crops.
It's such a good game. I mean I do think that does. I mean, like, this person is saying that that stuff doesn't stimulate the higher self, and they do go into depth later on. We will get to that, but
Right. Yeah, but it
I
does.
yeah, it
It
does. Yeah,
does.
it does. I believe it does. I believe it does. It what that
Because you
game.
know what I learned? You know what I learned? You spoke about Farmville, you done sparked me.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is what it is. Like it also intrigues me too on the other side because I like farming, and if you really want to take a real scope of it, it gives you like a little bit more of like an idea of like what it is that you're doing on a farm because you're not just like planting the strawberries, you're also harvesting the trees and you're cleaning the pen, making more babies, planting more trees, moving the horses, and you're doing all this stuff on the farm bill. So it gives you like an idea of like tending to the ability of doing those kind of things.
Hmm. I think you're right. I also think it teaches you resource management, which can be a very valuable skill if you're trying to manage time. You know.
Yeah, if you manage the time, and that's the thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, so to continue on, right? So there is here we go. All right. So by following at first the right movement right when the false danger is removed, the activation of the reward center has been correspondingly larger impacted than where the response to occur without the previous fight or flight mobilization. Hence, the adrenaline makes you value the reward more in the context of Farmville harvesting the strawberries. Valued more if you get them before they time
They
out.
die.
Yep. In order to, in other words, um, the contrast of the activity and the dopamine in the brain when subsequented just so yields a subjectively greater sense of value of the reward than would otherwise occur, right? So you overvalue it based on what they're saying to get you to care about the game. So if anyone's ever wondered why did I care so much about this game, there you go, right there. There's the science behind it. All right. With that being said, let's keep it pushing, right? Let's talk about dopamine. Let's talk about dopamine and what that does in the brain, and especially from the context of this person's talking about, right? So the loop of attention is closed, and we are drawn forward to the next game conflict. Hence, after the reward, having learned now to anticipate activation of the reward center of our brain, which having to actually meet, well, excuse me, without having to actually meet any real danger. While having the sense of danger because your etheric body can't say no to the effects of adrenaline. It is the rhythmic oscillation between these two sides of the endocrine response system that is problematic for spiritual development because the rhythmic oscillation works in a way that could almost be described as ego enslavement. So, what this person is trying to say in that section, in my opinion, is that the game stimulates adrenaline in your body. That is not a choice that you consciously make. It does that naturally. Now, I believe that you could, actively keep yourself from being spooked in, the context of watching a horror movie. Yeah, I'm not gonna get scared, but for most people, they're not actively trying to do that. So it
Right.
naturally sparks your adrenaline centers, and hence what I said before. You don't want to run away from the screen because your higher self knows there's no danger. So it's in the way that I think you could break this down in the sense of they say ego enslaving. I see what they're saying. I do think it might be a strong word, but or strong term. But I would more so say it's more of it's like teasing your nervous system that isn't really followed with like if your adrenaline was amped up. Now this could happen in a conversation, but I'm thinking they're talking about fight or flight, so I'm really thinking like natural response. Like you would probably burn a lot of that off from like sprinting away.
Right. I think it may be because they're coming from a place of like, because it's creating habitual nature, but it's really a habitual nurture, and enslavement only comes from something that it's a learned behavior
Hmm.
that's like forced upon. So it is because like you're forcing the body to endure something that's not really happening
Hmm. I see what you're saying.
re- repetitively,
I see what you're saying.
and it can desensitize the body to really react to that adrenaline sensation.
Hmm. That makes me wonder. That makes me wonder if like people who play video games have a slower response to like real danger.
Right, right. But it could be reversed to where some people have a faster response because it's like the game,
Hmm. That's interesting.
So it really depends on the kind of body it is and how they're really taking it in.
That's interesting. I would actually compare that to there's a game called Assetto Corsa where you can race cars and it's like a realistic driving simulator. And from the players and the top players in there, it's even a movie that just recently came out. I am blanking on the name of the movie, but they play in that game. Someone, it's this kid becomes a professional Formula One racer by playing Forza. If I'm not mistaken. Um, but those games are built to be simulators, so they simulate real life. And I guess if you were driving naturally in your day to day and you would play a lot of those games, your skills might be like OD. Like your response times might be even more shocking, or you might even potentially even go faster because you have more control or knowledge.
Right, right. Because everybody has like a second function to where once that fight or flight gets activated, you're either going to fight or flex,
Hmm,
right?
that's very interesting. That's very
Yeah, that's
interesting.
how.
All right. Well, let's keep going a little bit more. All right. So the ego is meant to develop is meant to develop so to be the initiator and dissolver of the astral activity. But because the activity gets linked to rhythm in the etheric body, the ego loses its hold and gets swept up in drama of the etheric body. It becomes more of a passive spectator and relinquishes its potential to be creatively free with the respect to the astral body. Now that's pretty deep. I
Link,
You said link,
link, link.
link. It plays with the link you have to your astral self. Huh. If it plays with the link you have to your astral self, I wonder if that has an effect on how you treat people in games.
Yes, because it's not treating the body, because the body is not having the visual experience. The body is having an experience of the atmosphere around it. The body is merely a vessel for the life to exist around it, in it, and through it.
Hmm.
And we're utilizing this vessel to see what is manifesting in this realm. And while we've been living in this realm, we've created a way to watch the things that we've manifested in this realm.
Hmm. Okay, that's a beautiful explanation.
And so the only thing that's really experiencing that is the experiencer, which is the spirit. The body is the spirit, but it is not a conscious spirit. It is the unconscious spirit. Because without the spirit, the body is nothing. It is just there.
Hmm.
I cannot watch a video game without the spirit.
Indeed. You gotta have your spirit on you.
Yeah.
Trying to join the lobby, you gotta have your spirit logged on. Yeah,
So that's where the ego becomes, enslaved, because the ego only exists through the body.
hmm,
Through the body. The ego only exists through the body.
hmm. The ego only exists through the body, and if your body is being enslaved to stimuli that isn't truly happening,
By the higher self, the ego is enslaved.
it's the body's enslaved, the higher self is not.
That's right.
Hmm.
Because
Uh,
the higher self is always in control.
It's interesting because that makes me think because they talk about the enslavement of the ego. It makes me think like if video games could technically be looked at as a form of separate of like training, so
Yeah.
that so that you actually don't become enslaved, so the higher self doesn't become enslaved to the ego.
We were saying this in the last episode too when we were talking about video games. And it's like, where did that come from? Because we're watching video games. So we're watching a game that's a video of a game that we could be possibly playing in real life.
Mm.
So it's just we're playing possibilities of other life. And
Yeah.
then like now they make the games to where we're playing, Batman and Thor, and all these characters. And now we're playing them as if we're them in this video game.
But the characters in those games, we embody their ego. Then
Yeah.
our ego embodies their ego, and our higher self our astral self is observing all of that.
Yep.
That's deep. That's deep. That's super deep. That's really deep. Well, speaking on imagery, that is a great.
This writer was definitely feeling some type of way this day.
Yeah.
He wrote this.
Yo.
Like, word up.
Yeah, no, for real. That's what I said. Like they were kind of cooking. Cooking.
Even the logo for this is dope because I got the triangles at the top.
Yep. Yeah, but once again, we'll link the article below because this is, and there's another one. We're definitely gonna read the other one in another episode. But like we're only 4 pages in.
Yeah.
And cooking, and we got like 7 more to go. He's cooking. That's why I wanted to show you this. I thought you would really enjoy this article. It's this person speaks about something that I think most people I have yet to see anyone go this deep in the context of gaming. I have yet to see this.
Right. Especially talk about dopamine and stuff.
Yeah, connecting it to the brain, but also making sense of the spiritual aspects too. Like that's deep. Mm-hmm. That's really deep. So imagery, right? The video games, imagery, the astral body, and the ego, right? So once again, another quote: "The astral body is symbolizing. Excuse me. The astral body is the symbolizing body. We think about spiritual development. The most important thing is to make sure that the images that the astral body encounters are spiritually nourishing." Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, I got another quote for you. "In other words, when an image becomes meaningful with respect to how the ego needs to bring itself forward for the particular individual, the image is nourishing. Such images are symbols and can even become healing symbols when the ego uses them for spiritual development." Right? Hold on a second. Let me turn off the stove because cooking. That was hot. The meal was done. That was fire. Yeah, that we got to be careful what we look at in the real world, but in reference to this, we got to really be mindful what images we're taking in.
Yeah. And they even start talking about it, and it's so funny because I just spoke about how the logo they have here is so dope.
Yep.
It's
imagery.
So aligned. It's so aligned.
They're very, very in alignment. And
yeah. Because that's the earth, fire, water, air symbols.
That's actually really interesting. I saw the different colors. I did not even peep the lines in between them. That's interesting. Yeah. See, this is why having a website is a good idea.
Together we unite.
Yes, indeed. I'm gonna say a couple more, and then we can really deep dive on this. Video games are largely devoid of exactly these kinds of images. Furthermore, the specific images that trigger the reward center are almost invariably linked to the idea of advancement, but do not carry the reality of advancement. This is played out differently in different game styles, but is a near universal feature of all games. Higher scores, in-game achievements, item drops, new characters, gold pieces, unlocked content, and so forth. So, what this person is saying is it's not necessarily bad imagery that is the problem, in their mind. It is the fact that these images, you are advancing the ego of a being that you are not. Although your high, I will say though, although your higher self still can get lessons from that, which they do touch upon that, but your higher self can still get lessons from the advancement of another being's ego, which I would like low-key like to connect this to anime, as in the context of the most popular genres in anime, which is like shonens, which is characters weak in the beginning become stronger throughout their journey, and you enjoy their journey.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you are an observer. Once again, your ego is not doing anything, but your higher self is to a certain extent hypnotized by the journey of this other being, which, if done correctly, you can feel like you either are them or are there with them. Which I still think can teach you valuable lessons.
Yeah. Yeah, I always tell people that we need to learn how to use technology and not let technology use us.
Mm-hmm.
We got to know why we're using these things. And it's okay to binge. There's nothing wrong with binging every once in a while. But it's also more effective to be aware of like why we're doing it and if what it looks like when it gets to the unhealthier realms of it, because all of these things that are so much fun, there's always going to be some type of downside, and knowing the gravity of that is what's really going to help activate our flight, or fight sensors to still work properly.
Mm.
As long as we stay attuned to that, so that we know, you know, because I used to tell this to my kids, when you're watching TV, it's not real. What's happening outside in front of you, that's real. And you have to be aware of what you're watching. Why are you watching that? Do you know who you're watching? What you're doing? They're not perfect. I'm not saying they're perfect from the things I've said, but it's been said to them. It's been encouraged upon them.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think about a memory I had when I was watching a certain type of cartoon when I was younger, and my father told me, "Yeah, stop watching that." And at the time, as a child, I was like, "What do you mean? It's hilarious." But as I grew up, because I listened to him and stopped watching it, and looking back at that show, I was like, "Oh, I see exactly why he told me to stop watching this." It was not developing me at all. Really at
It's
all.
really right. Yeah.
Yeah, there was no type of development, like mentally, spiritually, or anything. It was the epitome of cartoon violence. The epitome of that. But there's also, but as I said, that's why I mentioned before, when done correctly. When done correctly, it can stimulate the ego and the astral self in ways in which real life could never have. Moving forward, though. Right? Okay, another quote. All advancements that occur in the context of the game stay in the game. In other words, the reward. Hold on 1 second. Okay. In other words, the rewards are spiritually vacuous. Even while the physical, etheric, and astral bodies undergo an experience as if there was some kind of advancement occurring or imminent. But, another quote, many MMOs in games in this sort of game, even though the explicit the explicit in-game rewards and challenges are spiritually vacuous, the needs for cooperation and communication with real human beings provides the ego with potential avenues for development. Life when coordination with other human beings is required, the game does not add anything significant for potential ego development that is not already present in normal life. So basically, they believe that the majority of games are spiritually empty for you, but in the context of MMOs, the cooperation you have with other players and the communication and so forth and the relationship building can develop you in a lot of ways. But that's great, but you could just do that in normal life, is their argument. I think that's a valid point, but I will say there are some caveats here. One, there are people out there who have social anxiety, and it's much easier for them to talk with someone on through a screen than it is in person. So MMOs would be tremendously helpful for their development. This also could be the fact that people live in an isolated area where there isn't a lot of other people around, or maybe people they can't talk to or don't like, and they make friends from playing games, which I think is a caveats to keep in mind. There's probably more, but the ones that come to mind right now. Do you have anything on that, Muhammad?
I'm just taking it like all in, you know, being able to experience like how it filters through us every day, and the coordination that it creates, whether it's good or bad, is definitely very flatline, and you have to be very intentional. Like even like Fortnite, like I think Fortnite is like the coolest game, but people don't know how to use that shit.
How do
They
you think
still
they should
they
be
still
using it?
they still twiddling their fingers with it. There's people are still talking to each other like they're still don't know that they're free.
Hmm.
And it's displayed in the game.
What do you mean?
It's like, Fortnite, you can actually do stuff. Like you can actually have like Fortnite fucking parties and create really create the virtual system for us to have fun, and people still make it very singular. And it's so optimal to utilize now. Like people can have be in the same Fortnite space on a phone, on a tablet, on a gaming console, all at the same time with their characters,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and and we're still over here twiddling our fingers. It's okay to be virtual together, but it's like people are still acting like these kind of things are a sick obsession, and we can't show our freak on the outside. And I feel like that's starting to really come out now more. I think Dungeons and Dragons is starting to make that more of a thing,
Mm.
and that's pretty cool. There's this freaking game that I always play. My cousin got us hooked on it, and my son is being the one that holds the torch for it right now. It's called, I believe it's called Jack in the Box.
Ah, yes, yes, yes.
And you have the game on Xbox. You download it, and you can have people put in a QR code, and everybody can play from their phone, and you play like certain trivia games and stuff. And that's a pretty cool way to like bring a room of like 7 to 8 people together, like all having fun and talking and joking and getting things wrong or right or not knowing what the hell we're doing and trying to figure out new games to play. It doesn't have to be this thing that's like in this weird box and it's being pointed as like being overconsumed and some everything is overconsumed. I feel. And I feel like, video gaming is gonna start turning into a field of more intentionality. We're not gonna be so asleep to what's really, in front of us, the possibilities that are in front of us.
Hmm.
Like imagine having office meetings on Fortnite.
That's why I think the context of it when people say like the metaverse, um, like that's what they really mean. It's similar to what you're saying.
That's
It's
what they're trying to push. That's definitely what they're trying to push. I
that
feel like.
people can do that, and the thing is, those things places like that already exist. I think the big examples of that are World of Warcraft, RuneScape. There's huge examples of that. Second Life, VR chat is probably the biggest example of VR chat is just simply you just go and hang out with people. That's really it. There are games, but like games are kind of secondary. It's all about hanging out. I've gone to parties in VR chat, and it's I've had tremendous experiences. I've met my friend twice. It, yeah, I met my friend twice because of VR chat. I met them in real life. Then I met them again as a character in VR chat. We were talking. I didn't realize it was them. But we're like, oh yeah, man. I'm like, yeah, you're pretty cool. And he's like, oh yeah, you're cool too. And then we started talking. We realized that we were both each other. And I was like, whoa. I was like, whoa, I just met my friend twice. I've never had that happen before. um, and to your point about the inner freak, like you freak, geek, however you want to interpret that. Um, like these things can that's why I like augmented reality. They can extend our reality to help humans better connect. They do not need to be the end all be all. And
Yeah.
frankly, the main reason video games gets a bad name is because it does not contribute to society. Is what most people think of it. Like this doesn't contribute to you getting a job. This doesn't contribute to you doing this or that, which is just not true. Like people have met their
Wow.
future partners in video games. People have met best friends. In the context of myself, like I have learned what it takes to make tasks that might seem boring to me fun to me through gamification. Like,
Encourage my own clients. Like if that's something that brings you peacetime and you can feel calm, even if it's a violent game, like that makes you feel calm, make sure you make space to play that damn game. You know?
yeah, have fun.
Don't stretch it out just because you're supposed to be an adult and you got to be responsible and you can only do responsible things. Like it's responsible to keep yourself mellow,
Hmm.
you know. And going and shooting up some aliens or other people, some a brick wall, whatever the hell it is that's gonna make you feel Gucci at the end of the night, please, by all means, do it within reason.
Yeah, within reason. As long as it's not like destroying your life, which anything could do that, truthfully. And that isn't to minimize people who deal with video game addiction. It's just that don't feel so bad about yourself, really, because shame is one of the worst feelings you can feel, and guilt. Um, yeah. Um, so from that part moving forward, the writer talks about basically your motor control systems, and they talk about your fine motor systems and how that controls your immediate feelings in this realm, and how what video games do is this quote right here, which I think is maybe the best way to describe it. It says, okay, so in the context of your motor systems, it can lift and ennoble or willing impulses by bringing them into contact with more subtle possibilities of how the world can be, and thus how we can be in the world. How you experience the world with your motor systems. The aesthetic sense gives thinking traction and allows it to make new distinctions that were previously unavailable. Hence, basically, your motor systems in this realm allow you to experience life differently through either your thinking, but also like physically moving. And games don't necessarily do that as much as they could. Now, granted, this is in 2011, and even though being in 2011, they still do not recognize like the Wii as an example, where the Wii changed like a lot of families in America and around the world, which was games, but they were movement-based games. My own personal feelings on the Wii, as an example, my dad, if I'm not mistaken, lost 5 pounds playing Wii Fit tennis. Like, I used to come home and he'd be hashing it out. And I'd be like, wow, bro, you're really going in. Like, your level is over 1,000. He was playing that game. And he was losing weight playing that game. And I can't imagine.
Don't sleep on it.
Yep. Don't sleep on it. And it's like there's these things are developing over time. We're still in the process. We're still in the process. No other way. Don't get me wrong though. This person is saying some very good things, but we're still in the process.
Yeah, it definitely helps me pace myself because I'm very mental. And so I've gotten a chance to play Crash Bandicoot, and I'm so happy. I'm like a little kid. But, because for me, video games were on small TVs, box TVs with the curved tubed. So video games were very different for me growing up. And so seeing like my childhood game on a flat screen, it's just like, wow, totally
Different
amazing.
experience, right?
Yeah. But just playing Crash Bandicoot and being able to understand like I can't do certain things without making like that exact move or waiting for that exact moment, and learning how to pace yourself and learning how to play the game differently, because when I used to play Crash before, the lives were different versus now. So before Crash, you used to get um only so many lives to start. I think it was like the standard was like you get 3 lives to start, and throughout the levels that you beat, you get 100 apples. I believe you get a life, and you get lives other ways and stuff. But now, Crash Bandicoot, you have infinite lives. It just tells you how many times you've died, like how many times you've died to beat this game, right? And it shows you like the average for you to get like a star. So, like you have to have beat this level less than you have to have died less than 74 times in order to get a star
Throughout the whole game.
For this particular level, for each
Okay.
level, for each game. For me, like I beat the level after dying like 150 times, you know.
Yeah, one
But
of
I'm
those
just
hard
learning how
ones.
to play this Crash again after years. But it's different, compared to before. You had lives, and that was how we used to identify how we would like definitely have to pass the controller. Like, if it goes to start all over, like, do you want to continue? You got to pass the controller at that point.
Yeah.
Versus now, like, you can keep dying and it'll be a while before somebody even realize, like, yo, how many times did you die?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how, oh my gosh. That's like me, like I've been playing this game Battle Bit Remastered, and like I die all the time in it, and it's like every time I get to the end of the game, I just look at the count and I'm like, wow, bro, I don't even remember that. That's it's like a
Yeah, it's
watch.
definitely different.
All right. Um, so we talked about the aesthetic aspect. We're going to continue a little bit more of that with two quotes. To perceive spiritually, we must develop our ability to sense in ways that are commensurate within the phenomena that we will encounter in the spiritual world. Right? That's a deep quote. So I'm gonna keep reading just to give it more context. If our senses are capable only of the most gross distinctions, the world we live in will be correspondingly gross. If we are fine, excuse me, if they are fine, then the world we live in will be fine. Okay, continuing with the quote. The art the arts are a training in the physical world of what can become capacities for perception in the spiritual world. This is not all that is required, of course, but we can't underestimate the value of artistic training for spiritual perception. Well, how does that relate to video games? Once you understand that the aesthetic sense is developed strongly through a link between attention and fine motor control, as it occurs in the feeling of life, which constantly monitors the state of the soul as we act on the world and allow it to act back on us, we can see how this link is co-opted in a very limiting and deadening way with the respect to video games. Stop right there. Stop right there. So basically, they're saying that you're fine motor. You're talking about twiddling your thumbs. It's really funny. In conjunction to this, the motor skills you gain from playing games, similar to what someone gains from painting a picture or drawing, are not equal. Is what they are saying, and they don't actually help you benefit in this physical domain with your ego as would painting or drawing or playing an instrument. I
Current
personally,
perception.
yeah, current. I mean, in their perception, you're right. In their perception, I would argue against this, but I'd argue against this in a way in which is very different than what I think they would have thought. Because I don't know if they were as prevalent back then, but music, for example, music, as they mentioned, DAWs, digital audio workstations, which the majority of modern music is made in, most music producers use, are digital programs that don't really require much motor skills other than like your hands and so forth, and maybe your voice if you're recording into them, or an instrument if you know how to play it. But people get immense spiritual development from them, and people who are listening to whatever people making these things get immense spiritual development too. And those people are more or less just twiddling their fingers on a keyboard or on a screen if they're using their phone. So I don't know if you can compare the lack of mobility based on the context of game controllers and keyboards, what they're talking about, as something that doesn't allow people to develop
Right.
spiritually.
Well, I mean, I think that comment may be more time based,
Mm,
because this is coming from a time like right before 2012, so it was right before the spiritual awakening,
mm,
the massive spiritual awakening commencing. And it was also around a time where video games were just not, they were a big industry, but they were not really producing anything like they were saying, like really viable at that time. Like there was a lot of those what fantasy games were coming out back then.
mm-hmm,
They were just probably coming out with like Call of Duty back then. And like they were just starting to come out with like more violent games. Like they were made, like we were probably over like Resident Evil by that point, because they came out with so many Resident Evils
mm-hmm,
um, over the early 2000s, and we were like really just getting bored of video games, and that's really was the turning of the hero era for Marvel and DC, and when they picked it up into the movies.
mm, I see what you're saying. They
Yeah, they got more, Pixar became more of a thing, and they started doing more of that 3D animation, and they started losing, those video game artists that were putting in more effort to the graphics and the content that goes with it as well.
Yeah, for example, like Maya and stuff like that. It's interesting because I was going to
Hmm.
like gaming camp and stuff around that time period, and it was one of the things. One of the things we were learning was Maya, and they said yes, you could use this in games. You could also use this for like movies, like Shrek and stuff like that. So in terms of like career paths.
Hmm. Yeah, see, that's when Shrek was getting really big. Yeah, and that's when we really started coming back into cartoons more and animation overall, and with Incredibles and stuff, became a really big thing, and Puss in Boots was coming out, really pushing the significance of the graphics there. I think that's a part of why video gaming became a little bit more flatlined because there was just so much more that we were able to do. Televisions were upgrading because remember what I was saying, like we were playing video games on the old screen, and televisions were upgrading, and the gaming they had to upgrade uh, the way that they were displaying those graphics. A lot more differently than um, regular movies. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because it's gonna show up differently, uh, that artistry versus like real people. And again, like still wanting to stimulate that higher self of of what's gonna give that highest dopamine. And
Mm-hmm.
that takes time to come around.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's so many people have so many options. They're just jumping back and forth. Um,
Yeah, the cell phone was becoming popular
yeah.
because even Farmville now, Farmville is different. I used to play Farmville on the computer, and now you can play Farmville on the phone. And it was a big turn of the century for that type of graphics for us. And the animation of games have really transformed. We have so many games that we can download on our own phones, um, that it's just so endless. Like there's bubble this and bubble that and snake here and fly here and Sims World, and now they have Farm City.
Yo, oh my gosh, I was playing. Was it Farm World? No, it was not Farm World. It was a cooking game. I forget the name of it. But like, I
A
made a
chef, like something chef.
yeah. I made a whole Facebook just to play games. I remember that I was 13. I made a Facebook just to play this cooking game. Like, and I was in.
That's how some people get on social media, just to play these games.
Which I find very interesting. That's not the trends nowadays. Like you don't play a game on Instagram. You don't play a game on
Twitter.
Twitter. But that's why I kind of feel like people say the metaverse, because I think people like us who remember getting and being on social media just to play games, like I think that, especially with the fact that the games have advanced tremendously since then, that's only I think that's gonna come back in a way in which people did not expect it to come back. And like you're gonna be playing your games and saying hello to your grandma in a tweet box at the same time, because your grandma's playing with you. like
Yeah.
like
I
it's
miss the Slingo days. I've played Slingo now. It's different. It's definitely different, but it's still Slingo.
it's man, it's good times, good times. But all right, so we we're gonna stop this article here. We're almost at the end, but we are running out of time. And I would like to leave this to the rest of y'all. So we got you this far into the article. Please
Hey, yeah,
go.
get to the
Yeah,
end.
get to the end. Go get to the end and read that. And, let us know how you feel in the comments below. And we could further this discussion because I think we are in the midst, as Muhammad said, we're already in the concept of a massive spiritual awakening, and I think games are only going to help truthfully fuel that. But I think anything will. But yeah,
It's gonna be a big part of it. It is a big part of it. It is a big part of it. Period. It is.
well,
And we're coming into the shape of that.
well, Mahatma, if you would be so kind as to let these lovely people know where they can find you.
Oh, yes, definitely. You can find me on Elite Motivation 411 on any major platform, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Elite Motivation 411. And you can check my podcast out, EM Healing, on Spotify.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if you are interested, you can check me out, That Kid Pounds. You can find me on all platforms, That Kid LBS, all one word. And if you would like to see more Toonamaste information, you can check out Toonamaste on all platforms, TOONAMSTE, Toonamaste. It was a pleasure. Stay safe, and until next time, my friends.
Peace and light.